be aware the devs are changing the Goblin event. If you're not aware, they actually went and messed up the release of this event. The timing. It was supposed to be 15 minutes every 3 hours. And so an emergency maintenance is going to go ahead and fix this tonight. So in this video, I want to go over those details, how the market has completely crashed, but will probably start rising up again, and you might want to buy your things sooner than late, as this is quite a bit of a nerf. I also want to go over some important details and tips and tricks that you should take advantage of during this event to make the most of it so you can get all that extra rewards, how you can get a coupon code for a surprise extra reward. I'll also share how you can get as much movement speed as possible, should help you a ton to hunt down these goblins, and ultimately if this event is a success or a complete failure and terrible for the market. So back to the emergency maintenance. Maintenance will begin at 5:30 AM UTC, last approximately 2.5 hours, and after this point, Loot Goblin event will only spawn every 3 hours. The Goblin Chiefs will be immune to the freeze effect. You'll no longer be able to troll everybody by perma-freezing him, although it was kinda good in some cases to make sure your friends got there in time. But yes, they're removing that, and they're fixing a client crashing issue and the Solent and Mastery X Boost items displaying incorrectly in the Battle Pass. I don't know about you guys, but I think this event is absolutely insane. It's the total right type of event that works completely for how I was playing the game. I'm a complete free-to-play player. I pretty much went and sold everything that I didn't desperately need since the Talandre launch. Over 20,000 loosened from selling drops and just not splurging on things that I didn't necessarily need right then and there. Not a full PvP player right now because of the amount of costs that it requires in order to be competitive in PvP, so I decided I'll just stick with PvE. And thus it has ultimately allowed me to save tons of Lucent, and now the market has just crashed on all of those high value items. Yes, that's a bad thing in terms of earning Lucent. I can no longer get those exclusive drops and earn a ton of Lucent by selling them, but I can now go and spend the Lucent that I've earned over the past month to actually kit myself out with some of the best stuff and only spend a few thousand. So personally, this event is a huge win, but I can see why some of you think it's the worst event yet and how it's completely nuked the market. I think many of you who feel like that are the ones who spent a lot obtaining that gear. And now all of a sudden you see that gear is only worth 1,000 Lucent versus 10,000, and you feel a bit sore that you spent that much for it. Ultimately, one could argue it's not the devs' fault. They're not the ones setting the prices in the auction house. That's us other players. And you just shouldn't pay so much for an item that you don't think's worth it. When everybody thinks like that, the prices go down until it meets supply and demand. It's ultimately us, the players, who set the prices, and the only reason the prices are so high is because they actually sell at that price. Because some people are crazy enough to actually pay that much. But nonetheless, you can blame the devs for having them at such a low drop rates. And totally, I agree with that. These items in the first place should not have been that scarce. But just be aware, this is probably something they're going to do with all new gear that they release for every update. So yes, just be on the cautious side. Don't pay more than you're willing to actually pay. And always keep in mind that your gear at some point will get much easier to obtain and yes, become pretty dirt cheap. Look at all the tier 1 items that used to be best in slot and all of a sudden are worth nothing. But yeah, I completely agree. If you spent a ton on the items and all of a sudden they're worth nothing, that just feels bad. The devs changing the event so that it spawns every 3 hours doesn't really change that much actually. If you have a lot of time to play the game, you can always come back every 3 hours and you're still going to have this event 8 times every day. Right now it's 8 times every day, but crammed into a just 8-hour period. You have to log in at 4 UTC, partake every hour until 11 UTC, and that's the entire Goblin event. Right now I need to go to one of the areas. If you want to know how to make the most of the event, ideally you're part of a big guild and you join like a vanguard and you would pin where you find Goblin Chiefs. Those are the most valuable ones. These Goblin Chiefs ultimately give you the value of 20 of these standard golden goblins. You get only blue chests from them with only have a 5% chance to give you your gear, and the purple chests have a 100% chance to give you that gear drop, but then within that only 20%. But that's the same with the blue chests. So ultimately, your priority is always to find the goblin chiefs first, and you can do so by going early to one of the locations, and you will always find one goblin chief here unless some players already killed it, and get your purple chests. Now the way you make the most of this then is you have multiple people across different zones, and when they find a goblin chief they pin it, and ideally the server's not so crowded that it doesn't get killed before your friends can come and help kill it. Right here, I believe, is a goblin chief. He has, again, over 9 million hit points. So he does take a bit of time to die, and people can then all group up and kill him. Just do everybody else a favor and don't deal too much damage to him. Otherwise, you'll end up killing him before the others can get the drop. This freezing right here, kind of annoying, but I can see how it's useful for these other players to join in and get a hit in, and then you obtain your chest. And if you want to do the minimum of this event, is every time it happens, you try and obtain at least one goblin chief chest. This is already a huge value. Again, as per the drop rates, you have a 20% chance to get any of these great items. Individually, it's a 0.44% chance. Yes, 70% of the time it's a pouch, 10% of the time it's this morph. But it's just crazy value that you can get from these. Kind of insane that they actually added these items to the loot pool this early on. They could have honestly delayed it by another month before completely crashing the market on these. But I'm sure they have devs who are aware of the economy, and it was probably drying up. The amount of people actually spending that much to obtain those really rare items just wasn't enough anymore. And even with prices at only 1,000 is still worth it, because a newer player will join, see that, and think it's a more reasonable price. Input some real money in the game and actually get the good gear that they need so they can be more competitive in this game, particularly in the PvP scene. It will create a much more level playing field. But for the high spenders, yes, this isn't such a great thing. Now you're going to have people spending a lot less Lucent than you did to have basically the same gear. And I can totally see why that doesn't feel so good. Again, in terms of the market crashing and the value of all these items becoming like 10% of what they were, in my opinion, that's fine. But as others have pointed out, it should potentially get replaced by something else. But for all we know, it might. They might have plans to introduce new gear pretty soon. But if we look back at the game's history, we got field boss gear dropping in dungeons just a month later in November after the game launched, where those field boss items used to be again in the tens of thousands of Lucent, and then all of a sudden the dungeons release and you can get them either for free or for just like a few hundred Lucent. Be aware with how these goblins spawn again. It's whenever you get the announcement for the event, they will start appearing. They will keep spawning for 15 minutes. However, they appear to spawn in waves about every 3 minutes or so. However, the chiefs, the goblin chiefs, which drop those high value packs, only seem to spawn once. So it is highly recommended you go to an area and you immediately look for the chief. You can take the opportunity once you've killed the chief in an area, if you've done so really quick, jump to a new area and find the chief there. Some people have said there can be 2 chiefs in an area, but I haven't found that to be the case. And these areas are generalized as like nesting grounds one area, the Urstelia Fields is another area, Windhill Shores is another, etc, etc. You can even go to the dungeons, like the Silas Abyss. I'm not fully sure what's determined in area here, but I would assume every floor could have a goblin chief, but don't quote me on that because I'm not sure. Just be aware of people eclipsing those dungeons once you go in there, and they could just completely take it over, dominate the place, and then have all the goblins for themselves. The more packs you can get, the better. Every time I usually strive to get at least one of the purple packs and about 10 to 15 of the blue packs. And this is going as solo. If you have a guild to support you, you can probably get 5-6 purple packs, 20 or more of these blue packs. And it's also going to depend on your server and how populated it is. And it's also going to depend on the peak times as well. Right now, it's all consecutive, 1 hour after the other during peak time, at least here on EU. So it's a bit scuffed. There's so many people. But again, this patch will separate it to being every 3 hours. And it also then fixes how the timing was really screwed up for those of you, say, in the US. Now, to chase down these goblins, you seriously need some decent movement speed to keep up with the pack. There's a thing. You kind of want there to be a group of people to help beat up and kill these goblins. But at the same time, you don't want too many that you don't get a hit in. And you need to be fast enough to keep up with everybody. So I recommend getting a few items just to help you with move speed. And there's definitely some cheap ones you can pick up, and you can then min-max it even further if you wish. Ultimately, I made a bit of a quest log here just to show you what different items you can get that can give you as much movement speed as possible. There's this helmet which gives you movement speed. You could get the full spectral set to give you 15% movement speed. That's kind of not realistic. Most of you are not going to pay that much just for some movement speed, so you're going to not have those. But then you would just have any old boots that is going to give you movement speed bonus and then have the ability to have movement speed trait. And you can see here, if you look, the best boots are actually going to be these that give 7.5%. The chosen ones that also then have the trait that can give another 8%. But yes, pretty unique. You can have this helmet to give movement speed. You can have the rune synergy here to give movement speed on the necklace. You can have these 2 rings that give flat movement speed bonuses. And then this belt which gives the most movement speed. Also having that rune synergy. Sure, there's the Cordy crossbow. Not going to be realistic, but like the only weapon that's going to give move speed. And then in terms of skills, you can have like Assassin Step. As soon as you kill an enemy, you get an absolute ton of movement speed. You could run the Great Sword that has a passive whenever you use a mobility skill. You also get movement speed. And then Masteries, you just want to get all the ones that have movement speed buffs. And Crossbow is usually the one that has the most. Like with this combo, you're getting over 12% plus another 10% from this Mastery here. But I wouldn't really worry about that too much. Just try and get few gear pieces that have movement speed, try and get those rune synergies that have it too, and you'll be good to go. And yes, you can min-max with food to also give you more movement speed. I generally have 760 here, but yes, also dash maxed out level 5. You ideally need that. So now in terms of this coupon code, well, you're going to have to join the Discord, and there's this loot drop here. You can see the post for that, and ultimately it's just going to give you 5 million extra solid. The codes are going away fast, like you copy and paste one of even the most recent codes. You can only have one of them per account, but they're still getting consumed all the time super quickly. Again, it's only 5 million solid. I wouldn't worry so much about missing out on it, but it's a nice bonus if you get some free time and you manage to be quick enough to grab one of these codes. Sucks if you're on consoles and you'd have to type that thing out. You're not going to stand a chance right now. But they may make these codes a bit more accessible later on, and you can always direct message somebody who can potentially give you one. Ultimately, I hope this helps. Yes, the market's crashed. It has made it a ton more accessible to obtain all those best in slot items that you need. Just have a browse for yourself. Expect the prices to probably fall down to the minimum at the end of the weekend, and then they'll probably stabilize and go back up again after the event is over. This event's over at next Thursday. Be aware again of the timing. We're going to have to figure out when that first 3 hours starts, if they do it properly, and then it's going to be every 3 hours from there. Having it also every 3 hours instead of every hour during peak time will also mean less people killing the goblins, which also does mean less people getting the loot, which can also mean the prices rising already after this update. So you could be best buying what you need sooner than late. Don't expect the prices to go much lower than they are right now. So thanks all for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye for now.